The last thing Lena Gracewell expected on her day off was to be summoned to a crumbling rental unit on the edge of downtown Savannah, a place her father hadn't dared call home since before the pandemic. She stood in front of the door, clutching a brown paper bag of groceries in dread. The humidity wrapped around her like a second skin, thick with the smell of mildew and salt air. She knocked once, then twice. "Come in," a thin voice called. She pushed the door open. The apartment was dim and stifling. The blinds were closed, the air stale with regret and old cigarettes. Her father, Carl Gracewell, sat hunched over a chipped Formica table, an empty coffee mug in his hand and shame on his face. His once proud frame had withered. The man who used to lift beams and charm clients, now little more than a shell in a threadbare t-shirt. He didn't look up. "You didn't have to come. You said it was important," Lena replied, setting the bag on the counter. "So here I am." Carl rubbed his forehead. "I did a stupid thing, Len." She leaned against the counter, waiting. She didn't interrupt. He always took his time before dropping a bomb. "I owe money," he said finally. "A lot of it. 50 grand. The silence between them cracked like glass. She blinked. 50? His voice cracked. "I tried to fix it before it got this far. I thought the house would sell, but the buyer pulled out. And the others, they're not people who forgive." Lena's chest tightened. "You said no more betting. You promised me." "I know." He finally looked at her, eyes bloodshot but clear. "I messed up, baby girl. I messed up bad." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "So what happens now?" "Bankruptcy?" Carl shook his head slowly. "It's too late for that." He pulled a folded envelope from under the table and slid it toward her. "What is this?" she asked, heart thudding as she opened it. Her eyes moved down the page, line after line of formal legal language. Her name, her signature required. A marriage contract. She looked up, stunned. "What is this?" "It's a solution," he said. "A man came to me, said he knew about the debt, said he could make it all disappear." Lena's throat went dry. "And in exchange?" "He wants a wife, quiet, respectable." "No ties, no past," he swallowed hard. "He asked for you." She stepped back, disbelief crashing over her. "You offered me like some property?" "I offered him nothing," Carl said quickly. "He already knew your name, knew everything." "It wasn't a request, Lena. It was a deal on the table, one that ends this nightmare for both of us." Lena stared at the contract again. The man's name was typed in neat, cold font. Beauregard Thorne. She whispered it out loud, as if saying it would make sense of it, but it didn't. "Why would a man like this want to marry a stranger?" she asked. Carl looked away. He didn't say. Lena's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. "I'm a hospice nurse, Dad. I hold the hands of people who are dying. This isn't my life." Carl's voice dropped to a whisper. "You always said you wanted to help people. Maybe this is helping someone." She wanted to scream, wanted to run. But instead, she sat down. The silence between them was suffocating. Her mind churned with questions she didn't have the strength to ask. Outside, the street was quiet. Sun filtered through moss-draped trees and old bricks, the beauty of Savannah always hiding its secrets. "I don't even know him," she said after a long pause. "You'll meet him tomorrow," Carl replied. "He'll have papers. If you say no, he walks, but the debt stays." Lena stared at the contract. Her name typed neatly, waiting for a signature that would erase her father's shame. "Where does he live?" she asked. Carl hesitated. "An old estate on the edge of town. The Thorne Foundation owns it. Used to be a museum or something. They say it's practically a fortress now. He doesn't leave much." "Doesn't speak much either." Lena stared at the name again. Beauregard Thorne, a man who didn't want a partner, just silence. What if he's dangerous? Carl looked at her, eyes damp. He's not, he's just broken. Like me. That night, Lena sat on the edge of her bed in her small, rented studio, unable to sleep. Her nursing shift started in 5 hours, but she couldn't quiet her mind. She pulled out her journal and wrote a single line. Is love something you find or something you choose? Then she added, would you ever choose it for someone else? In the morning, a car waited for her on the curb. Black, sleek. The driver didn't speak. Just handed her a manila envelope and held the door open. Inside the envelope was a note written in fine black ink. Miss Gracewell, you are under no obligation. But if you choose to come, the door will open only once. B. Thorne. As the car pulled away from the curb, Lena looked out the window at the city she'd grown up in. She watched it blur past, Victorian homes, gas lamps, and the winding roots of trees older than her last name, a life she understood, even if she didn't always like it. The ride was long. Out of the historic district, past the moss-covered cemeteries and down winding roads lined with aging oaks. Finally, the car slowed at a wrought iron gate flanked by stone pillars. A man stepped forward to unlock it, not saying a word. The estate was set back from the road, barely visible through thick greenery and old brick walls. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a memory someone tried to forget. The car stopped in front of broad stone steps. Lena stepped out, heels clicking on the path, breath catching in her throat. A man stood in the doorway. Not young, not old. Dressed in gray slacks and a linen shirt, sleeves rolled. He had the kind of presence that made the air shift. Beauregard Thorne. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just opened the door and held it wide. And Lena, with everything in her screaming not to step forward, crossed the threshold anyway. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The door clicked shut behind Lena with a sound that echoed like finality. Inside, the Thorne estate was dim, not from neglect, but from intent. Heavy curtains filtered the golden afternoon light into a soft hush. The air was cool, scented faintly with old wood, lavender, and something darker, time. Beau Thorne didn't move as she stepped inside. He stood several feet away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but unreadable. Up close, he was more striking than she'd expected. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples, his face sharply drawn, as if sculpted from restraint. His eyes, a pale steel blue, rested on her without flinching. "You came," he said, voice low and even. "I don't know what I expected," Lena replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "But it wasn't this." He tilted his head slightly. "And what is this, Miss Gracewell?" She looked around. High ceilings, antique frames, wide staircases, beauty preserved but unlived in. A mausoleum pretending to be a home. A flicker passed through his eyes. Not offense. Something else. Recognition. "Follow me," he said. He turned and walked down the hallway without waiting for her response. Lena hesitated, then followed. Each step echoed softly on the polished floor. Portraits lined the walls, stern men, elegant women, all watching. Time felt suspended. No clocks ticked, no music played. Just silence, dense as fog. They stopped at a sitting room. It was tasteful, understated. A fireplace, unlit, a tray of untouched tea. The windows here were open, sheer curtains stirring gently with the breeze. Beau gestured toward a tufted armchair. "Sit, please," she obeyed, smoothing the fabric of her dress. He sat opposite, crossing one leg over the other. For a long beat, he studied her. "You understand the nature of this agreement?" he asked. "Legally or emotionally?" He raised a brow. "Start with legally. I sign the contract," she said. "The debt goes away. I become your wife in name only." No questions, no expectations. Correct. And emotionally? She pressed. He looked away, jaw tight. There are no emotions in contracts, Miss Gracewell. That's the point. I disagree, Lena said quietly. Even silence has emotion. Bo turned back to her, something sharp in his gaze. You're not what I expected. You either, she replied. But here we are. Another silence fell, not awkward, but coiled. I'm not looking for companionship, he said finally. Or a partner. I want simplicity, privacy. Someone who understands boundaries. I'm a hospice nurse, Lena said. I understand boundaries better than most. His eyes lingered on hers. For a moment it felt like he was searching for something, an edge, a break, a reaction. But she held her ground. Bo stood and walked to the window, his voice softer now. I had a wife. A daughter. This house was full of sound once. Lena's heart shifted. I know. He glanced over his shoulder. What else do you know? Only what's been whispered, that you lost them, that you stopped living afterward. He nodded slowly, eyes on the swaying trees outside. People love to fill silence with stories. And some silences need to be filled, she said gently. He turned back to face her. Do you expect to change anything here? No, Lena replied. But I won't pretend it isn't broken. The air thickened. Something unspoken hung between them. Mutual awareness, resistance, and the faintest crack of understanding. You'll have your own room, he said. Third floor. You're free to walk the grounds, but don't go past the conservatory. That part of the house is closed. Why? He looked at her, expression cool. Because I said so. Lena didn't press. Not yet. Bo moved toward the door. Miriam will show you around. She's my aunt. She keeps the estate running. He paused. Do you want time to think before signing? Lena stood slowly. No. He raised a brow. I already made my choice, she said. You don't offer second chances. For the first time, something close to surprise crossed his face. He nodded once, then walked away without another word. Lena exhaled, alone now in the quiet room. The tension still pressed against the walls, but beneath it, just barely, was a thread of curiosity and loneliness. Not hers. His. A soft knock came at the door. An older woman entered, crisp in a navy dress and low heels. Silver hair pulled into a clean bun, face composed but not unkind. Miriam Thorne, she said with a polite nod. You must be Lena. Just Lena, she replied, stepping forward. I imagine this is strange, Miriam offered. That's a word for it. Miriam gave a small smile. Come. Let's get you settled. They walked in silence through the grand halls. The estate revealed itself slowly. Dark-paneled libraries, sun-drenched drawing rooms, long corridors that curved unexpectedly. As they ascended the staircase, Lena caught sight of a locked door at the end of a narrow hallway, partially hidden behind an old piano. Miriam noticed her glance. That part of the house is closed, she said gently. Best not to wander. Was it hers? Lena asked. Miriam didn't answer. She simply opened a different door. The guest suite, or now her suite, was airy, with large windows, pale linens, and a faint trace of lavender in the air. There's a schedule, Miriam said. Breakfast at 7, dinner at 6. You'll find Bo keeps to himself. I noticed. But he notices more than he shows, Miriam added softly. Lena turned to her. Why me? Miriam's eyes were kind but cautious. I'm not sure, but he hasn't opened this house to anyone since it happened. Lena stood still for a moment, then crossed to the window. The view overlooked the garden, wild and tangled, with color fighting to bloom through the green. It feels like someone locked the doors and forgot to grieve, Lena said. Miriam's voice was barely a whisper, or never learned how. Later that night, Lena lay in bed, the house creaking gently around her. Rain had begun to fall, soft against the windows. She couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts, too many locked doors, literal and not. She sat up and reached for her journal again. He doesn't want a wife. He wants silence that agrees to stay. Then she paused and wrote, "But silence doesn't mean peace, and this house is not at peace." Outside, the garden waited. And somewhere in the walls of this strange, silent house, so did the truth. The morning came, dressed in fog. Lena woke to pale light pressing against the sheer curtains, the kind of soft gray that made everything feel suspended. The scent of lavender lingered faintly in the air, less like perfume, more like memory. She sat up slowly, unfamiliar sheets rustling beneath her, the weight of her new reality sinking in for the second time. She wasn't just visiting this estate. She lived here now. As she stood and crossed to the window, her eyes scanned the garden below. It sprawled in elegant disarray, overgrown, yes, but still beautiful. Wisteria curled around the stone arches, and the lavender bushes, though tangled, reached toward the morning as if stubbornly refusing to be forgotten. She thought of Beau. The man was a mystery wrapped in formality, his every word precisely chosen, every movement economical. But last night, in the sitting room, there had been something beneath the cold, a fracture in the stillness, and Lena had seen it. A quiet knock broke her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Miriam entered carrying a folded piece of stationery and a small glass tray with breakfast. Sliced pears, a croissant, and a teacup filled with something floral and steaming. "Good morning," she said. "He asked me to bring this." Lena took the paper and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat and angular. "Miss Gracewell, if you're inclined, I'd like to show you the estate. B. Thorne." She raised her eyebrows. "He wants to give me a tour?" Miriam smiled faintly. "Don't mistake it for warmth." "He's not giving you the estate. He's giving you the rules." Lena smirked, then softened. "He's grieving, isn't he?" Miriam met her eyes with a gaze that was older than her years. "Grief comes in many shades. His just tends to wear grey." She left without another word. After breakfast, Lena dressed simply. Linen blouse, loose slacks, flats. She found Beau in the front corridor, standing beside a grandfather clock that hadn't chimed once since she arrived. He didn't comment on her arrival. He simply turned and started walking. They passed through wide rooms filled with relics of another life. Artwork, family china, stained glass panels half shadowed by drawn curtains. He explained little, though occasionally offered clipped notes. This was the drawing room. "My grandmother used to host piano recitals here." They entered a long gallery, the air cooler here, untouched. "This wing hasn't been used in years," he said. "Why not?" Lena asked. He glanced at her. "Some doors close on their own." She stopped walking. "And some stay closed because no one's brave enough to open them." Beau looked at her then, not irritated, not dismissive, just still, as if that was the first real thing someone had said to him in a long time. They kept walking. He led her out into the garden. The path curved gently through the overgrowth, lavender brushing her fingertips as they passed. It wasn't just a garden. It was something that had once been loved, fiercely. "My daughter planted the lavender," Beau said quietly. "Said it smelled like dreaming." Lena turned to him. His eyes weren't on the plants. They were somewhere far behind them. "She was 8, he added. "She had more color in her than this house ever did." Lena swallowed the ache rising in her throat. "What was her name?" "Eloise." The name hung in the air like a song half remembered. "She used to dance here," he said, glancing at a patch of cracked stone. "Even when the weather turned cold, said the garden didn't mind." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed with things unsaid. Why me? Lena asked softly. Bo didn't answer immediately. I needed someone who wouldn't ask for love, he said finally, and wouldn't expect to be loved in return. She blinked. That's a very specific request. He turned, meeting her gaze. You didn't flinch when I told you that. Because I understand grief, she replied. And because I know what silence does when it lingers too long. He looked away, jaw tightening. I'm not trying to fix you, Bo, she added, but I won't pretend you're not broken. His laugh was dry and unexpected. You're more honest than most people I pay to be. She smiled, just slightly. I'm not here for the money. No, he said. You're here because someone else broke a promise. And now you're paying the interest. Lena froze. He turned to her. Your father gambled away his pride. I can respect a woman who cleans up after her father's mess. I don't admire it, but I understand it. She stepped back, not from offense, but from the weight of the truth. It wasn't cruel. It was clinical. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was simply incapable of comforting. You don't trust people easily, she said. He tilted his head. Do you? She thought about her mother, who left when she was 12. Her father's debt, the patients who cried in her arms at the end of their lives. No, she admitted. But I don't punish the ones who try. Bo studied her, then nodded toward the path. This way. They came to a glass conservatory, half swallowed by ivy. The door was locked, rusted at the hinges. You said not to go past here, Lena said. I did. Why? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a key from his pocket and placed it in her hand. Lena stared at it. What is this? Trust, he said, or something close enough. Then he walked away. She watched him retreat down the path, his figure folding into the shadowed hallway of the house. The key sat in her palm, heavy and delicate. She looked at the locked conservatory, glass clouded with age, vines curling around the frame like memory. And for the first time since arriving, Lena Gracewell felt the weight of possibility settle into her bones. This wasn't just a house with secrets. It was a house asking her to listen. And maybe to stay. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Rain came in the night. By morning, the estate was wrapped in a soft drizzle that clung to the windows and turned the garden into a watercolor of blurred greens and purples. Lena stood by the glass, the key Bo had given her still in her palm, cold and silent. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her mind kept circling that moment. His voice, so calm, so final. Trust. Or something close enough. The key felt heavier than it should, like it carried more than a door behind it. A tap at her door made her turn. Miriam stepped inside without asking, carrying a folded towel and a pair of boots. Thought you might want to walk the grounds this morning, she said, placing them by the edge of the armoire. You'll want to stay clear of the eastern side. Mud'll swallow your shoes whole. Lena smiled faintly. Thanks. Miriam didn't leave right away. Her eyes drifted to the key on Lena's nightstand. You've been given something most people never get in this house, she said quietly. Lena looked at her. A key? No, Miriam said. A chance to be seen. Not all wounds are meant to be healed, but some are waiting for the right hands. Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Miriam's voice softened. You don't need to rush to open anything. Sometimes the door changes when you're ready. After she left, Lena stared at the key for a long while. She slipped on the boots, tucked the key in her coat pocket, and stepped outside. The rain had slowed to a mist, the kind that kissed the skin rather than soaked it. The air smelled like wet earth and lavender, like something waking up. She followed the path she and Bo had walked the day before. Past the swaying wisteria, the stone bench cracked with moss, and finally, to the conservatory door. The glass was veined with age. Ivy crept along the corners like it had tried to hold the place together when no one else would. Lena stood there, heart racing, not from fear, but from weight, as if something behind this door remembered being loved. She slipped the key into the lock. It resisted, then turned with a sigh. The door creaked open. Inside, the light filtered through stained glass panels, dust dancing in the beams. Plants, once vibrant, now leaned brittle in their pots, but some still held color, patches of green defiantly clinging to life. In the center of the space was a small table with two mismatched chairs. A child's tea set sat untouched on top, porcelain faded, one cup chipped at the rim. Lena stepped forward, breath catching in her throat. There were drawings pinned along one wall. Crayon suns, stick figures, hearts with Daddy plus me scrawled beneath, paper yellowed by time but protected by stillness. She didn't need to be told this was Eloise's space. It was obvious. Sacred. This wasn't a room forgotten. It was a room frozen, held still by a man who couldn't bear to erase what was left. Her throat tightened as she touched one of the drawings gently. A lavender bush, smiling faces, the sun too big in the sky. It was perfect in its imperfection. "You came," a voice said behind her. Lena turned sharply. Bo stood in the doorway, hands in his coat pockets, his expression unreadable. She stepped back, suddenly aware she hadn't asked. "I didn't mean to. I gave you the key," he said. "You're allowed." She looked around. "It's beautiful." Even now, his gaze moved across the room. She used to call it her thinking garden, said it was where she made her wishes. Lena nodded slowly. "It feels like her." Still. Bo walked inside, each step deliberate. He stopped at the small table and touched one of the cups. "I haven't been in here in over 5 years." Her eyes widened. "Not once?" "No." He sat in the child-sized chair, knees awkwardly bent, voice low. "I thought if I left it untouched, she wouldn't feel gone." The rain whispered against the glass, filling the silence. "I can't imagine losing a child," Lena said, stepping closer. "But I've watched it happen to others. Watched parents hold hands with the end and try to stay whole. Most don't." Bo looked at her, really looked. "And you?" he asked. "Do you stay whole?" She paused. "I break in small pieces." "But I know how to put them back." He looked down. "I never learned that part." Lena knelt beside him, her voice gentle but unshaken. "You don't have to leave this room behind, Bo. But you can let someone stand in it with you." His jaw clenched. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," she said softly. "It's presence." Their eyes met, his haunted, hers steady. "I wasn't supposed to care about any of this," Lena whispered. "I was supposed to sign a contract, play a role, and disappear behind it. But you didn't give me a cage, Bo. You gave me your silence, and now I see what it's hiding." He stood abruptly, the moment fragile now, thin as thread. "You shouldn't be here long." She stood too. "Why? Because I'll see something you can't bury?" His voice cracked then. "Barely, but enough. Because if you stay, you might start seeing me." Lena blinked. He turned toward the door. Lock it when you leave." And just like that, he was gone. The rain grew louder, sudden and steady against the glass. Lena stayed still, surrounded by drawings and forgotten blooms. Her heart beat unevenly, as if trying to match a rhythm not yet written. She looked at the tea set, then sat down in the other chair. "Hi, Eloise," she whispered, tracing her fingers along the rim of the cup. "Your dad still remembers everything." She didn't cry. Not then. But something inside her softened. And deep down, she knew the door Beau had locked wasn't the only one that needed opening. And that maybe, just maybe, she had a key for that too. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, as if Savannah had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. Lena sat at the edge of the garden steps with a cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling into the cool air. The earth was still damp from yesterday's rain. It smelled of roots, renewal, and something fragile, like a season just beginning. She hadn't seen Beau since he walked out of the conservatory. Not at breakfast. Not even a passing glance in the hallway. But the key still sat on her nightstand. And that, she realized, was something. A small, unspoken thread neither of them had cut. "Morning, sugar." Miriam's voice floated through the open door behind her. "You're up early." Lena smiled without turning. "Couldn't sleep." Miriam stepped beside her, setting down a small cloth-wrapped bundle. "Lavender scones, still warm." "Thought you could use something sweet." Lena looked up at her. "Thank you." Miriam gave a nod, then glanced out at the garden. "I saw the light on in the conservatory last night. I didn't mean to stay so long." "I wasn't scolding," Miriam said gently. "Just noticing." Lena hesitated, then asked, "Why does he keep it locked if he still cares that much?" Miriam's eyes softened. "Because some grief is easier to protect than to clean up." Lena looked down. "He let me in." Miriam's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. "Then you've been given something rare." Later that day, Lena found herself alone in the kitchen. It was warm and sunlit, the kind of space that once must have buzzed with life. Now, it echoed with quiet. She flipped through an old recipe book on the counter, one with notes in the margins written in a looping feminine script. The initials A.T. were scribbled beside a lavender shortbread recipe. Ava Thorne. The woman whose shadow still lived in every room. Lena read it twice, fingers brushing the faded ink. She didn't know why she cared, but she did. Maybe it was the stillness of the house, or the little tea set untouched in the conservatory. Maybe it was the ache in Beau's voice when he said Eloise used to make wishes there. Or maybe she just wanted to bring something warm back into the cold. She found the ingredients easily. Miriam kept a tidy pantry. By late afternoon, the scent of butter, flour, and crushed lavender filled the air. She stood barefoot on the kitchen tiles, apron tied loosely around her waist, brushing powdered sugar over the cooling cookies. She didn't hear Beau enter until he cleared his throat softly. She turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled, shirt slightly wrinkled, like he hadn't planned on being seen. "I smelled something," he said simply. Lena raised an eyebrow. "Didn't peg you for a sweet tooth." He stepped closer, gaze resting on the tray. "Lavender shortbread?" She nodded. "Your wife's recipe." His expression flickered. "Where did you find it?" "In her cookbook." He said nothing for a long moment. Then, "She made them every Sunday. Said it was her way of keeping spring in the house, even when winter came too early." Lena watched him. "She sounds like someone who loved deeply." "She did," he said, quieter now. "Too deeply. That was the problem. Lena frowned. How can that be a problem? She didn't know how to let go, he replied, looking at the cookies but not taking one, even when things were unraveling. The room was filled with the hum of silence again, but this time it wasn't cold. It was heavy with memories. With things he wasn't sure how to say. Did she write music? Lena asked suddenly. Bo looked up. Why? There's a melody I keep hearing in the hall sometimes. Soft, almost like a lullaby. I thought maybe... He nodded slowly. She composed lullabies for Eloise, used to play them in the conservatory at night when she couldn't sleep. Lena's chest tightened. They're still here. She's still here, he whispered. Everywhere. For the first time, he stepped closer to the counter. He picked up a cookie, held it between his fingers as if testing its weight. Then he took a bite. A pause, a quiet breath. She'd be furious you didn't chill the dough first, he said. Lena let out a surprised laugh. Noted. But, he added, finishing the rest. She'd have loved that someone remembered. She poured 2 cups of tea and set them down. Bo sat opposite her without being asked. They didn't talk for a few minutes, just shared warm scones, old tea, and quiet company. Then he said softly, "You're not what I expected." She met his eyes. "You already said that. I didn't mean it as a compliment then. And now? I'm still deciding." Lena smiled. "Take your time." He studied her, more curious than guarded now. "You're not afraid of this house." "Or of me?" "No," she said. "But I think you are." That stilled him. She didn't flinch. "You're afraid that if you let someone in again, they'll leave. Or worse, they'll stay and remind you of what you lost." He looked down, the edge of his cup trembling slightly as he set it down. "I'm not here to replace anyone, Bo," she said gently. "But I am here now." He didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. And in that moment, Lena knew she had crossed a threshold no contract could ever define. The house had opened a door. So had he. And somewhere between lavender cookies and tea gone cold, the silence finally blinked first. The light in the Thorne estate shifted with the seasons, even when the clocks didn't. By midweek, Savannah had warmed again. The garden outside Lena's window pulsed with quiet color, and the breeze that drifted in through the screen carried a lazy hum of bees and the faint scent of fresh mint. She stood barefoot on the wooden floor of her room, a notebook open on the windowsill, the ink still wet from the sentence she had just written. There are rooms in this house that speak without voices, and a man who listens without knowing how to answer. Her pen hovered above the page. There was a knock. Not Bo. Lighter. Hesitant. "Come in," she called, already knowing. Miriam entered with a bundle of fresh laundry and that particular smile that always suggested she was waiting for someone to tell her something they hadn't yet found the words for. "Brought your linens. You're running low on towels." "Thank you," Lena said. "You really don't have to." "I like doing it," Miriam cut in. Towels don't argue. They just sit there and wait to be of use. Lena smiled and reached for the pile, folding the edge of a soft white sheet. "He's changing." Miriam paused. "Is he?" "Not fast, but something's shifting." Miriam walked to the window, her hands folding loosely in front of her. It's been years since someone made that man laugh. Real laughter, the kind that pulls from the belly, not just the throat. "He laughed?" Lena asked, surprised. "Once. Over a broken lamp and a puppy that wasn't supposed to be in the house. It was the last time I heard him sound young." Lena turned a little in her chair. Why didn't he leave this place after they died? Miriam stared out at the garden. Because he didn't want to start a new life. He wanted to protect the one that ended. They were quiet for a moment. Then Miriam added, "But protection and prison, they can look the same if you don't open a window." That night, the house was different. There was music. Soft, old jazz floated down the halls from the parlor. Lena followed it barefoot, drawn like a thread being pulled. She stopped just before entering. Bo sat by the window, a record spinning beside him, a glass of something amber in his hand. He didn't look surprised to see her. "You know this one?" he asked, gesturing toward the player. "Chet Baker," she said. He nodded. "Eloise used to fall asleep to this. I didn't know you played music anymore." "I don't. Not really." He took a slow sip, but the silence started to feel louder than the records. Lena leaned against the doorframe. "Sometimes grief wears a different face at night." He looked at her, the way people look when they want to ask something but are too tired for words. She stepped forward and sat across from him. The light in the room was soft, warm. Shadows moved gently on the walls. He handed her the other glass from the tray. She took it. Neither of them drank immediately. Bo broke the silence. "There are nights I forget what her voice sounded like. And it terrifies me." Lena's throat tightened. "That's not forgetting. That's your heart protecting itself." "But if I forget her voice," he whispered, "what else will I lose?" She set her glass down and leaned forward. "You'll lose more by not living than you ever will by remembering." He looked at her. For a long time. Something behind his eyes shifted again. The same quiet ache that had passed between them in the conservatory, now flaring warmer, closer. "Why did you really come here?" he asked. She inhaled, choosing honesty. "Because I thought I was helping my father. But I stayed because I couldn't bear the silence in this house." He didn't blink. "And now?" "Now I don't want to leave until I know if that silence can change." Bo reached toward the record player and flipped the vinyl. The click was sharp in the quiet. New music started, slower, moodier, the kind that filled space without intruding. He stood suddenly. "Come with me." Lena followed him into the hallway, up the staircase she hadn't yet climbed. The third floor had a different air, older, untouched. Dust motes drifted in the hallway light like whispers. He stopped at a wide oak door, unlocked. Inside, it was a nursery. Not one sealed by grief like the conservatory. This one had been cleaned, preserved. There were shelves of children's books, a rocking horse, framed drawings. A small bed, perfectly made. Not one speck of dust. "She never slept here," Bo said. "Not even once. We decorated it. But after she was born, Ava preferred keeping her close." Lena stepped in slowly. The scent of cedar lingered. She touched the edge of a mobile above the crib, tiny stars and moons spinning gently. "I kept it perfect," he said quietly. As if she might come back, Lena turned to him, heart aching. "Bo." He leaned against the wall, his voice low. "I told myself if I just kept something unchanged, it would anchor me. But instead, I became the anchor." She moved toward him. "Anchors hold ships in place, but they also keep them from moving." "I know." His voice cracked faintly. "I know." She reached for his hand. He let her take it. It was the first time he had touched her without obligation. Lena stood close enough to hear his breath, to feel the warmth of grief slowly turning into something else, vulnerability, raw and trembling. She didn't kiss him. She didn't have to, because in that small nursery, surrounded by what was left of a life not lived, two people chose to stop surviving in silence and start listening for something more. The morning after the nursery felt different. The house hadn't changed, not in its bones. The rooms were still full of shadows and half-faded sunlight. The walls still held their breath. But something had shifted. Like the air itself had sighed. Like the silence, for once, didn't feel so heavy. Lena stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands dusted in flour. The bread was rising, lavender and rosemary folded into the dough. She moved quietly, but not cautiously. This house didn't make her flinch anymore. Bo entered without warning, barefoot, in a white shirt that looked slept in. His eyes were soft, still carrying the weight of last night, but clearer somehow. Less armor. "You bake when you're nervous," he said. Lena didn't look up. "And you observe when you don't know what to say." He almost smiled. She turned then, catching the moment before it vanished. "Tea?" He nodded, walking over to the window, resting a hand on the frame. "I dreamed last night." For the first time in years, Lena poured water into the kettle. "What was it?" He hesitated. "I don't remember much." Just Eloise, laughing, and Ava was playing the piano. The house wasn't quiet. It felt alive. Lena placed the kettle on the stove. "Maybe it's trying to be again." Bo turned toward her, his voice low. "Or maybe it's you." She looked at him, caught by the honesty. It settled in her chest, warm and aching. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Miriam entered, her expression unreadable, holding a pale envelope in one hand. "You have a visitor," she said to Lena. "And I don't think you're going to like her." Lena wiped her hands and stepped into the hall. At the front door stood a woman in tailored navy slacks, a white silk blouse, and heels too perfect for walking on old stone paths. Her lipstick was a sharp berry shade, and her eyes scanned the house like it was a museum in need of updating. "Verity," Bo said coolly, stepping beside Lena. "Hello, cousin," the woman replied, not looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on Lena, polite but thinly veiled. "I wasn't aware we were receiving guests," Lena said calmly. Verity's lips curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "I'm not a guest. I'm family." Bo crossed his arms. "What do you want?" "I was in town. Thought I'd stop by. Pay my respects," she said, finally turning to him. "And see if the rumors are true." "What rumors?" Lena asked. "That you've married again." The hallway held its breath. Lena stepped forward. "We're under contract." Verity arched a brow. "How romantic." Bo's voice sharpened. "Verity, I'm not here to cause trouble," she said, walking slowly into the foyer, fingers trailing along the console table like she owned it. "Just curious. You've kept this place locked up for years. No visitors. No music. And now suddenly, a wife?" Lena's spine straightened. "I'm not a secret." "No," Verity replied. "But you're a symbol, and symbols have consequences." Lena glanced at Bo, but his expression had shuttered again, the wall rising too quickly. Verity kept circling the room, eyes catching on every object, every detail. "You know, Ava's sister still visits the cemetery, brings lilies every spring." Lena swallowed. "I'm sure it's hard for her," Verity continued. Seeing someone else in the house Ava built, raising eyebrows in town, causing whispers. Bo spoke then, quiet but firm. "You're not here for family. You're here to rewrite the story." Verity faced him. I'm here because you can't erase what happened. No matter how many fresh-baked distractions you bring into this place. The words hit the room like a crack in old glass. Bo stepped forward. Leave. Be careful, cousin, Verity said with a soft chuckle. Hearts don't break the same way twice, but they still break. She walked out without another word. Lena stood frozen, the echo of Verity's heels disappearing down the gravel drive. Miriam closed the door with a hard click. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Bo turned away. She's bitter, he muttered. Ava didn't trust her with anything, not even her own grief. Lena moved toward him. She's not wrong about the town, about people watching. Bo looked at her, eyes shadowed. Are you? No, she said. But I am wondering why you shut down just now. Why you let her change the air in this house so quickly. He looked away. I've spent my life trying not to make waves, Lena said softly, even when the tide pulled me under. But I won't be invisible here, Bo. I didn't come to be a placeholder. His shoulders tensed. You don't know what it's like, Lena, to bury your entire life and then watch people measure your healing with a stopwatch. Maybe I don't, she said. But I know what it's like to love people who self-destruct, and I know what it's like to keep showing up anyway. Bo turned to her then, eyes searching, voice brittle. And what if I can't be what you need? I never asked you to be, she whispered. I just need you to stop hiding from what you need. He stepped closer, tension between them crackling like static before a storm. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Neither do I, she said, voice shaking slightly. But I'm still here. The words hung in the air, honest and raw. Bo lifted a hand, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was a promise. Unspoken. Undeniable. And in the space between their silence and Verity's shadow, something else began to grow. Something that didn't need permission. Only time. Sunday came with the kind of blue sky Savannah rarely gave without asking. Crisp air rolled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Church bells echoed in the distance, low and solemn, marking the time like a memory. Lena stood at her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her navy dress. It was simple, the kind her mother might have worn to Sunday service. Her hair was pinned up, her earrings small pearls. Modest, quiet, steady. She looked at herself, not the nurse, not the placeholder bride, but a woman walking into town on her own terms. She met Bo in the foyer. He didn't speak at first. His eyes moved over her, lingering at the base of her throat where a silver chain disappeared beneath fabric. You look... He paused, then cleared his throat. Ready. Lena raised an eyebrow. For judgment? He gave a soft, dry chuckle. For company. She offered a small smile. And you? I don't go into town much. That's not an answer. It wasn't meant to be. They walked out to the car, an older model, elegant but subdued. Miriam had left it cleaned and waiting, a note tucked into the dash with nothing more than a lemon drop, and the words, "Drive gently." The town of Eden Falls sat just beyond the Spanish moss and winding back roads. Red brick sidewalks framed storefronts with names like May's Bakery, Holloway's Books, and Hiram's Hardware. The church stood at the center like a sentinel, whitewashed with twin bells and stained glass windows that caught the light like prisms. People noticed when Bo's car pulled in. Of course they did. He hadn't been seen in this church in nearly 6 years. Lena stepped out, smoothing her skirt, heart tight but steady.
She felt the weight of their eyes, their curiosity, their quiet judgment, and lifted her chin just a little higher. Inside, the sanctuary smelled of old wood and wax. The choir was already singing as they slid into the last pew. For a few moments, nothing existed but voices and light. But as the final hymn faded, Lena felt someone watching her. She turned slightly. Verity Holloway sat 3 rows ahead, her back straight, her posture perfect. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Lena knew. After the service, the congregation spilled into the lawn outside. Coffee and cookies sat on folding tables beneath magnolia trees. Children ran barefoot through the grass. Women in pastel dresses murmured in small circles. Lena stood beside Bo, aware of every inch between them. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," she replied, though her hands were clenched in her coat pockets. "Do you want to leave?" "I want to be seen and not explained." Before he could respond, Pastor Elijah Ward approached. Late 50s, dignified, eyes that had seen too much and still stayed kind. "Beauregard," he greeted gently, extending a hand. Bo took it with surprising ease. "Elijah. And this must be the woman everyone's murmuring about," the pastor added, turning to Lena. "Lena Gracewell," she said, offering her hand. His grip was warm, steady. "Welcome to Eden Falls." "You've caused quite a stir. I seem to do that without trying," she said. Pastor Ward smiled. "Then you'll fit in just fine." Verity approached then, slow and deliberate. "Pastor Ward," she greeted, voice honeyed. "Always lovely to see you." "Verity," he said with a polite nod. She turned to Lena. "You're brave coming here. I've been called worse." "People talk, you know," Verity said, eyes sparkling. "They wonder if it's real, if he's grieving, or simply replacing." Bo stepped forward, voice quiet but sharp. "Enough, Verity." She ignored him. "I just hope you know what you've walked into, dear. This house, this man, it's a legacy, and legacies don't take kindly to strangers rewriting them." Lena's voice was calm, but her words hit with precision. "I'm not rewriting anything. Just trying not to get buried under what's already written." Verity's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing else. Instead, she offered a tight smile, kissed Pastor Ward on the cheek, and drifted away like perfume on the breeze. Bo exhaled, jaw tight. Pastor Ward placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Ignore the noise. Truth doesn't have to shout to be heard." Lena nodded, but the silence that followed was loud enough. Later they walked along the river path behind the church, sunlight glinting off the water. "She thinks I'm a mistake," Lena said. "She thinks everyone is," Bo replied. Lena paused, toeing the edge of the path. "Do you?" He turned to her. "What?" "Think I was a mistake?" His eyes searched hers, and when he spoke his voice was rough. "No. I think you were the only honest choice I've made in a long time." She felt it then, that invisible pull between them, stronger now. No longer reluctant, no longer hidden behind silence. "But I don't want to be chosen out of guilt or grief," she said softly. "I want to be chosen because you see me, not because you need to quiet a ghost." Bo stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth between their shoulders. "Lena, I've lived inside a memory so long, I forgot what it felt like to breathe. You walked into this house, and for the first time, it exhaled." She looked up at him, eyes shining. And when he leaned in, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even deliberate. It was inevitable. Their lips met softly, like a beginning neither of them had planned, but both of them had been walking toward. And somewhere behind them, the church bells rang again. But this time, Lena didn't flinch. She leaned in. She stayed. The day after the kiss unfolded quietly, but nothing felt the same. Lena moved through the house with a different awareness now. Every hallway, every window, every rustle of the trees outside felt like it was watching something awaken. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was expectant. She found Bo in the library that afternoon, the sunlight filtering through the tall windows in golden stripes across the mahogany floor. He was seated in the armchair near the fireplace, sleeves rolled, reading a book that looked older than the house itself. He didn't look up when she entered, but the shift in his breath gave him away. "You're avoiding me," she said. "I'm thinking," he replied, eyes still on the page. "Dangerous." He smirked. "So I've been told." She crossed the room, standing near the shelves lined with leather-bound volumes and framed photographs. A younger Bo, Ava smiling with a violin in her lap. A tiny Eloise in overalls, reaching for a butterfly in the garden. "You kiss me," Lena said gently, "then disappear into Dickens." He closed the book slowly, finally looking at her. "I didn't expect it to matter that much. And now? Now I don't know what to do with it." She sat on the edge of the couch, facing him. "It doesn't have to be a promise, but don't act like it was an accident." He met her gaze. It wasn't. The quiet that followed stretched between them, thick, full of things they weren't yet brave enough to name. Then Bo leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "I loved Ava, more than I knew how to say when she was alive. And when I lost her, I thought the only way to keep her was to stop feeling anything else." Lena listened, hands clasped in her lap. "She was sunlight," he said, "wild and bright, and impossible to hold." "And you were the quiet," Lena said softly. He nodded. "She said I made her feel steady, but after she died, the quiet became a cage." Lena let that settle. Then, "And what do I make you feel now?" Bo looked at her, really looked. "Like I might still have time to live something true." Her breath caught. "I don't want to forget her," he said. "You don't have to," Lena replied. "I'm not asking you to trade one memory for another." He stood then, walking to the window. The garden below was waking up with spring, buds on the hydrangeas, the first hint of daffodils. Life, where there had only been memory. "I told myself I built this life to protect what I lost," he said. "But maybe I was just too afraid to build anything new." Lena stood too, joining him at the window. "I know how it feels to build around grief," she said. "My mother left when I was 12. No note, no explanation, just gone. And my father. Well, you've met the version of him that's left." Bo turned toward her. "I don't want a perfect love," Lena continued. "I want a real one. One that knows what broken feels like, and still chooses to stay." He studied her for a long moment. "You make things sound so simple." "They're not," she said. "But they're worth it." There was a knock at the door. Miriam stepped in, eyes flicking between them. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but a letter arrived." From the preservation board. Bo took it, nodding. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, she paused at Lena's side. "The kitchen smells like rosemary." "You've been baking again," Lena smiled. "I find it therapeutic." Miriam winked. "You're not the only one it's working on." Once she left, Bo opened the envelope. His eyes moved across the letter, then stopped. "What is it?" Lena asked. They've rejected the grant, he said flatly. For restoring the North Wing. Her brows lifted. But you've been funding that foundation for years. They say it's too outdated, he said. Not enough community engagement. Not active enough. Lena's mind sparked. Then maybe it's time it became something more. He looked at her. She took a breath. What if we opened part of the estate, not as a museum, as a hospice retreat? For families. Patients who need peace. Privacy. Comfort. It's everything this house was built for. Bo blinked, as if seeing the rooms around him in a new light. You said this house has been a cage, she went on. Let's turn it into shelter. He said nothing, but she saw it in his face. That quiet shift, the possibility cracking through the stone. I could run the care side, she added. I've done it before. You handle the land, the operations. We could do something that matters, not just for us. For them. He leaned back against the window frame, staring out at the garden. Eloise would have loved that. Lena reached for his hand. Then let's do it for her. He looked at their fingers, hers smaller, steadier, wrapped in his. We'd need help, he said. Volunteers, permits. Staff. I know. It won't be easy. I know that too. He turned to her, the weight in his voice softened now. Then let's begin. And in that moment, no contract, no past, no ghost had more power than the two of them standing side by side, daring to choose the future. Because finally, Bo Thorne wasn't just surviving a memory. He was building something that could live beyond it. The first steps always looked small from the outside. A call to the zoning office. A meeting with the city board, ordering fresh linens, arranging tea in a newly dusted room that hadn't seen a visitor in years. But to Lena and Bo, each task felt monumental, like cracking open windows in a house that had forgotten how to breathe. For the first time since she arrived, the north wing doors were unlocked. Sunlight stretched across the hardwood floors in long golden lines. The wallpaper, though faded, still whispered its charm, and the smell of lavender drifted in from the open courtyard beyond. Lena stood near one of the bay windows, arms folded, heart full. This space wants to matter again, she said. Bo stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. It never stopped. I just wasn't ready to let it. She turned to him, eyes soft. You are now. He met her gaze, and in the quiet that followed, something between them settled deeper, not rushed, not dramatic, just certain. That afternoon, they met with a small group from the town board in the front drawing room. Miriam had arranged the seating, brought out lemonade and shortbread, and smoothed every wrinkle from the linen tablecloth as if dignity depended on it. Lena presented their idea with quiet conviction. Bo filled in the logistics, land usage, safety standards, donation structures. They spoke as partners, equal, aligned. And still, at the end, one of the board members, Mr. Fletcher, who wore a bow tie and a permanent frown, tapped his pen and said, "It's an ambitious proposal, Mr. Thorne. One that doesn't erase history, but rewrites how it's seen." Lena didn't blink. Isn't that what healing is? Later, as the guests filed out, murmuring among themselves, Lena leaned into the doorway to watch them go. "You were calm," Bo said, appearing behind her. "I was terrified." He smiled faintly. "Didn't show." "They'll approve it," she said almost to herself. "They have to feel it." The weight of what this place could mean. Bo stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And what does it mean to you?" She turned slowly,
Hope. In a place that once only held memory. He reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers, like a promise not yet spoken. Just then, Miriam entered from the hall, holding a sealed envelope. Her face was unreadable. "This came for you," she said to Bo. "Hand-delivered." He took it, frowning, opened it. Scanned the page. His face changed, subtle. Controlled. But Lena saw it. "What is it?" she asked, stepping closer. He folded the letter slowly. A notice from Ava's family. "They're contesting the property." Lena's stomach dropped. "What? Why now?" Bo exhaled. "Because they know something's changing. Verity must have said something, and they think they still have a claim." Miriam's lips pressed into a thin line. They never wanted this place. They wanted the memory of it, and to keep it still. Lena's voice sharpened. "Can they take it?" "Not directly," Bo replied. "But they can delay everything. Force hearings. Tie it up in paperwork." Lena looked at him. "So they're trying to stop the retreat, not because they care, but because it's yours. And now, ours." He nodded slowly. "It's not about the land. It's about letting go of what they refuse to mourn properly." Silence. Then Lena straightened. "Then we fight, with grace. With purpose. But we fight." That evening the storm finally came. Rain lashed against the windows. The wind howled down the chimney like a grieving song. Lena stood in the conservatory, watching the garden blur through sheets of water. Bo entered without speaking. He didn't need to. She turned to him. "I should have known peace wouldn't come without resistance." He moved beside her. "Neither did love." She looked at him sharply. He didn't flinch. "That's what this is, isn't it?" She hesitated. "Is it too soon to say it out loud?" "No," he said. "It's too late not to." He reached for her, not with urgency, but with certainty. And this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't hesitant or searching. It was grounded, real. After, they stood in the middle of the conservatory, the echo of Eloise's laughter still somehow caught in the glass, the storm outside still raging. Lena whispered, "We can't let them stop this." Bo pressed his forehead to hers. "They won't." She took a deep breath. "Then tomorrow we start again." "No," he said. "Tomorrow we move forward." And somewhere, under the roar of wind and rain, the house exhaled again. But this time, it sounded like a beginning. Rain lingered the next morning, soft as breath on glass. The house was unusually still, as if holding back its voice. Lena walked barefoot down the hall, her fingers brushing along the velvet wallpaper, damp with time. She carried 2 mugs, his coffee, her tea. When she reached the library, Bo wasn't there. The fire from the night before was nothing but embers. A folded blanket on the couch. His book on the armrest. But no Bo. She set the mugs down and moved through the house, checking room by room, her chest tightening, in that quiet way grief used to wrap around her in hospitals, like something just out of place enough to warn you. She found Miriam instead. "In the courtyard," Miriam said gently, sensing the question before it was asked. "He's been out there since sunrise." Lena pulled on her sweater and stepped outside. The garden was soaked, petals heavy with water, lavender slick with rain. And there he was, Bo, seated on the old iron bench beneath the wisteria arch, drenched, hands folded,
face unreadable. "You're going to catch cold," Lena said, walking to him. "I used to sit here every morning," he replied, not moving. "After they died." She knelt beside him, ignoring the damp earth. "Why today?" I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. His voice cracked like brittle paper. "The night of the accident, Ava had begged me not to drive." Lena stilled. "She was dizzy," he said. "Her heartbeat was erratic. She knew something was wrong, but I wouldn't listen. I thought she was being dramatic, and I drove anyway." "We never made it to the hospital." Lena's throat closed. "She died before they even pulled us from the wreck," Bo whispered. "And I've never told anyone that." Rain slid down his cheeks like something sacred. Lena reached for his hand. "I've carried it like a truth carved in stone," he continued. "But the worst part isn't that I didn't listen. It's that I spent years convincing myself it was fate, because if I admitted it was a choice, I'd never stop punishing myself." Lena sat beside him. "You didn't kill her, Bo. You made a mistake. A human one. A mistake born from love and panic, not malice." He looked at her then, eyes hollowed by years of silence. "I buried her in guilt, and I kept this house the same, locked rooms, cold beds, old echoes, because I thought I didn't deserve anything more." Lena took a breath. "And now? I'm terrified of feeling joy again," he said. "Because what if I forget her?" "You won't," she whispered. "You don't honor the dead by staying buried with them. You honor them by living the life they couldn't." Bo looked away. "The retreat. The hospice. It was her dream, too. She wanted to use this house for healing. I just didn't see it until you said it." Lena's heart ached. "Then maybe this is her, too, speaking through us." He nodded slowly, and she squeezed his hand tighter. But the calm broke again hours later, when a letter arrived. Official, heavy paper, ink pressed deep. Bo read it in the entryway, the rain still clinging to his collar. "They're filing a formal injunction," he said. "Verity and Ava's parents." Lena steadied herself. "What grounds?" "They're claiming Ava's name is still attached to the deed through an old trust clause. They want to freeze any structural changes to the estate." Miriam appeared in the doorway, jaw tight. "They had 6 years." "Why now?" "Because now there's something beautiful to ruin," Lena said. Bo handed her the letter. "We have a week before the hearing." She read it slowly. "Then we don't wait. We show them what this place can be." That night, Lena lit candles in the conservatory. One by one, small pools of gold against glass. She placed Eloise's old tea set at the table wiped clean, set 2 lavender cookies beside it. Then she left the door open. Bo found her there, quiet, eyes fixed on the moonlight reflecting through the glass. "You always make space for memory," he said. She turned to him. "Because it's not the enemy. It's just waiting to be heard." He stepped closer. "I love you, Lena." The words settled between them. No thunder, no wind. Just truth. She reached for his face, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "I love you, Bo. And I see you. Not the guilt, not the shadow. You." He pulled her close, and this time, the silence was full. Not of loss, but of belonging. They held each other in the soft hum of candlelight, and for the first time the house didn't feel haunted. It felt whole. Savannah's light was strange that morning, soft, pale gold, like the world had finally paused to listen. Lena sat at the long dining table with a cup of untouched coffee. a notebook open in front of her, pen resting between her fingers. Across from her, Bo flipped through documents, legal forms, floor plans, letters from hospice consultants. His eyes were steady, but his jaw was tight. The injunction hearing was 2 days away. "I don't want to fight them in court," he said, finally breaking the quiet. "I want to show them what we're doing, not defend it like a crime." "They're not coming to see," Lena replied. "They're coming to stop." Bo closed the folder slowly. "Then we invite them, all of them, Verity. Ava's parents, the board, let them walk through this house. Let them feel what it could be." She looked up, cautious. "Do you really think they'll come?" "They care about legacy," he said. "So we show them a legacy that breathes." The idea felt reckless. Or maybe it was brave. Sometimes those two felt dangerously alike. By afternoon, Miriam was already at work, directing the gardeners to clean up the front walk. Lena arranged seating in the parlor. Bo called in a local artist to paint new signs for what would be the Eloise house. Everyone moved as if something vital was at stake. Because it was. The next evening they opened the gates. Cars lined the gravel driveway. Guests stepped out in muted colors and cautious glances. Ava's parents arrived together, her father in a pressed suit, her mother wrapped in a pale shawl. Verity followed, fashionably late in a storm-colored dress and matching skepticism. Lena stood by the conservatory doors, welcoming each one with a voice steady enough to hide the thunder in her chest. Miriam served tea. Bo moved through the rooms like a quiet host. And the house, for the first time in years, felt alive. Lena guided Ava's mother into what would become the private patient wing. The wallpaper had been cleaned. Light streamed through the windows onto a neatly made bed. A vase of lavender sat beside it, fresh from the garden. "She would have loved this," the woman said suddenly, voice thin. "Ava, she always wanted this house to be more than memories." Lena nodded gently. "That's what we're building. A place where care and love don't end with goodbye." When Bo appeared behind them, Ava's father turned to face him. "I still don't forgive you," he said without anger, only weariness. "But I can see you're not standing still anymore." Bo didn't flinch. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking to finish what she started." Later, Verity stood in the garden alone, her arms crossed, gaze fixed on the rows of trimmed lavender and the warm lights glowing through the conservatory windows. "You've turned it into something sentimental," she said when Lena approached. "Or something sacred," Lena replied. Verity looked at her, eyes sharp. "You think love makes you bulletproof. It doesn't. It makes you a mirror, and this house still has cracks." Lena stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time someone stopped being afraid of what the cracks reflect." Verity didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. The night wound down with candlelight flickering in every room, and the air buzzing with cautious approval. As the last guest left, Bo locked the front door behind them. The click quiet but final. Lena leaned against the frame, watching him. "Well?" she asked. "They saw it," he said. "Not all of them will admit it, but they felt it." She crossed to him. "I saw something too, in you. You didn't hide tonight." "I couldn't," he replied, voice low. "Not when you've given me a reason to stand in the light again." They walked to the conservatory, now transformed with soft curtains, potted plants, bookshelves, and a circle of chairs where families could sit. Eloise's old tea set still sat on its corner shelf, untouched, but no longer lonely. Bo picked up one of the tiny cups and turned it gently in his hands. "I've been haunted by what I lost. Lena stepped beside him. And now? He looked at her. Now I'm guided by what I've found. Their eyes met, and something quiet passed between them. Not the thrill of newness, but the weight of something real. Something earned. A future that didn't erase the past, but stood beside it. The hearing was still ahead. The fight wasn't over. But that night, under a sky stretched wide and full of stars, Lena and Bo sat in the conservatory with the windows cracked just enough to hear the garden breathe, and for the first time, they weren't surviving memory. They were living purpose, together. The morning of the hearing arrived wrapped in gray clouds and the hush of something inevitable. Lena stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the pearl buttons on her blouse, smoothing down her skirt with hands that trembled just slightly. Her reflection stared back, poised, collected, but underneath it all, a current of quiet dread rolled through her chest like thunder waiting to break. Miriam knocked softly. "Car's waiting." Lena turned, clutching her coat. "He's downstairs?" Miriam nodded. "He hasn't said much." "But he shaved. That's something." She smiled faintly, following her down the hallway. Every step echoed louder than the last. Bo stood at the base of the staircase in a charcoal suit, tie neatly knotted, his posture stiff but steady. When he looked up at her, his expression softened, just enough to breathe through the nerves. "You ready?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm still going." That earned her a half smile. "Then I'll be brave if you are." The drive to the courthouse was quiet. The road slick with early rain, trees bowing slightly under the weight of the mist. Bo kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his knee. Lena watched the landscape blur past, wondering how many times a beginning had looked like an ending before. The courtroom was modest, dark wood, rows of pew-like benches, a raised platform where Judge Calder sat with a face carved from stone. Verity was already seated with her lawyer, poised and unreadable, lips painted like armor. Ava's parents sat behind her, hands folded tightly in their laps. Lena and Bo took their seats. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, feel the whispers hanging like fog. The clerk called the case. Papers shuffled, names were read. Verity's lawyer stood first, eloquent and efficient. He framed the estate as a relic of Ava's legacy, a personal and family inheritance now being used for unauthorized public development. He gestured to Lena briefly, words like contractual spouse laced with careful restraint. Lena didn't flinch, but Bo's jaw flexed. Then their attorney rose, an older man with a voice like honeyed bourbon and a reputation for finding cracks in steel. "Yes, the estate once belonged to Ava Thorne," he said calmly. "And yes, its memory is strong. But we are not here to protect memory. We are here to decide what legacy looks like in motion." He laid out the plans for the Eloise house. The community needs. The letters of support. The Preservation Board's updated interest. Then he stepped aside. And the judge turned to Bo. "Mr. Thorne, do you have anything you'd like to say directly to the court?" Bo stood. Lena held her breath. He didn't speak at first, just looked at the judge, then at Ava's parents, then at Verity. And finally, at Lena. "My wife," he began slowly, "Ava, was a brilliant woman, fierce, imaginative. She filled this house with music, with lavender, with light. And when I lost her, I didn't know how to breathe without her shadow in the room." Silence. "I turned that house into a monument," he continued, voice steady now. "I preserved every piece of her because I thought that was loyalty. But I've learned something in the quiet years since. Preservation without purpose is just stillness.
And stillness isn't life. He looked to Lena, then back to the judge. The woman sitting beside me didn't erase Ava. She helped me remember her with truth.
She walked into a house built on grief and dared to plant something new. The Eloise house isn't erasure. It's continuation. It's love in motion. He sat down. No theatrics, no tears, just truth laid bare in its cleanest form. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to Verity. "Miss Holloway, do you wish to speak?" Verity stood.
Her heels clicked softly as she stepped forward. "My cousin was a dreamer," she said, quieter than anyone expected. "She believed in beauty."
In restoration. And yes, in this house. But she also believed in movement.
In growing past pain. She glanced at Lena, and for the first time, the sharpness in her eyes dulled. "I was angry," she admitted. "At Bo. At life. At how quickly it all unraveled. But I see now. Ava wouldn't have wanted this house frozen.
She would have wanted it full." A pause, then she stepped back. The judge made notes. Flipped through a stack of documents, and after a long, tense minute, he cleared his throat. "This court finds no substantial cause to restrict the intended transformation of the estate. The injunction is denied." The words rang out like a bell. Lena exhaled, hands trembling in her lap. Bo reached for her fingers beneath the table and didn't let go. As they left the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sky had cleared, soft blue unfolding overhead. Outside, Ava's mother approached quietly, her eyes rimmed with the kind of tired acceptance that only comes after carrying loss too long. "She would have liked you," she said to Lena. "Ava. She would have argued with you first, but then she would have baked you something and called it even." Lena smiled through the sting in her chest. "That sounds about right." They walked to the car, not hurried, not hidden. Just together. Bo opened the door for her, then paused. "She would have liked you too," he said softly. "But more than that, she would have been proud of what we're doing." Lena looked at him, the sky reflecting in his eyes. "Then let's keep building," she said, and he nodded. Because now they could. The air on the estate had changed, not in temperature or scent, but in soul. The house no longer whispered only of what was lost. It hummed with what was becoming. Lena stood on the front porch, watching the workers wheel in a shipment of hospital-grade beds. Each one destined for a patient who would come seeking peace, dignity, maybe even a little joy in their last stretch of days. Inside, Bo moved with quiet purpose. He wasn't a man hiding behind silence anymore. He spoke to the contractors, answered questions from nurses in training, signed forms with a steadiness that reminded Lena of someone rebuilding himself in real time. Miriam passed through the foyer with fresh linens folded high in her arms. "There's a young couple touring this afternoon," she said. "Their mother just got her terminal diagnosis." "They heard about the opening through the church." Lena nodded. "We'll give them the sunroom suite." Miriam paused. "You've changed this place." Lena looked around the grand front hall, now softened with fresh paint, warm lighting, wildflowers from the garden placed in jars on every table. "No," she said. "It changed itself. It just needed permission." Bo stepped into the hallway then, shirt sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand. "They delivered the benches for the lavender walk," he said. "And the chapel chairs?" Lena asked. "Tomorrow morning," he replied, then added, "There's something I want to show you." Out back. She followed him through the house, down the garden path that now bore a gravel walkway, bordered by blooming lavender and trimmed ivy. The conservatory doors were open, light spilling through them like an invitation, but he led her farther, past the tool shed, past the greenhouse still being restored, until they reached the clearing near the woods where Eloise used to play. A new wooden bench had been placed there, painted white, the ground around it cleared and seeded. Lena stepped forward, noticing the small plaque carved into the wood. "For the ones we carry forward." Her breath caught. "You did this?" "I wanted something simple," he said. "Something that stayed, even when everything else is finished." She sat on the bench slowly, her hands resting in her lap. "It's perfect." Bo sat beside her, staring out into the trees. "You know, I used to come out here and think the world stopped with me. Like time had agreed to freeze just long enough for my grief to catch up. And now?" she asked. "Now I see the leaves coming back," he said. "I see the branches stretching." Lena leaned into him. "This place is going to hold so many endings." He nodded. "And beginnings, too." They sat in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence had finally become something soft between them. No longer heavy, no longer cold. "I talked to Pastor Ward," Bo said after a moment. "He said he'd officiate." Lena turned, surprised. "Officiate what?" Bo looked at her. "A real ceremony. No contracts, no bargaining, just choice." "Mine and yours." Her throat tightened. "Are you asking me?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not ornate, not flashy, but meaningful. Inside was a simple gold band with a lavender engraving on the inside. "Just one word. Stay." Bo's voice dropped to something close to a whisper. "Lena Gracewell, will you choose me again? This time not because you had to, but because you can." She stared at the ring, then at him. "You were the quietest beginning," she said, eyes full. "And now you're the loudest truth." He smiled, just barely. "Is that a yes?" She nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes." "Yes, Bo. 1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and they leaned into each other, laughter and tears mingling with the late spring breeze. Later that evening, the two of them sat at the long dining table, a modest meal between them, candles flickering low. No guests, no music, just them and the rhythm of a home now alive with its purpose. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Lena asked. Bo looked around the room, the walls freshly painted, the sounds of soft voices and footsteps from the staff preparing for the first residents to arrive tomorrow. "No," he said. "But I think we found the place Ava hoped we'd get to, even if she didn't know how." Lena reached across the table, lacing her fingers with his. "Then we carry her too." And that night the house didn't echo. It spoke, quietly, joyfully. And the people inside it finally answered back. A full year later, the lavender was blooming again. The sun had just begun to rise, stretching across the garden in golden ribbons, warming the stone path that curved through the now flourishing beds of purple and green. Bees hummed lazily over blossoms. The house behind them stood tall, windows open, curtains breathing in the spring air. It was opening day. The Eloise house, once a silent estate weighed down by memory, now felt like a living thing. Warm bread baked in the kitchen. Laughter drifted from the staff quarters. Wind chimes sang near the chapel entrance. Every room had been touched by intention, designed with care and compassion. Comfort met dignity here, not as decoration, but as a promise. Lena stood just outside the conservatory, watching the arrival of the first families. An elderly couple with linked arms. A middle-aged woman helping her father from the passenger seat of a sedan. A hospice nurse wheeling a man in his 70s who looked up at the sky like he'd just remembered what it meant to be alive. She felt Bo step beside her before he said a word. "You kept the lavender exactly the way she planted it," Lena said softly. "She had good instincts," he replied. "She still does," Lena whispered. "Through you." Bo took her hand, his thumb brushing over the silver band on her ring finger. They hadn't made a spectacle of the wedding. It was quiet. Private. Just a small ceremony beneath the wisteria arbor, a few loved ones, and Miriam crying silently into a linen handkerchief she swore was only for allergies. "I never thought I'd say this," Bo said, eyes on the driveway, "but I'm not afraid of this house anymore." Lena smiled. "You never should have been." He turned to her. "You made it new." She shook her head. "No, I just asked it to remember who it could be." Guests were now being shown to their rooms. Miriam led a nurse through the west wing, her voice calm, her eyes as alert as ever. There was no longer a single locked door in the house. Every room had purpose. Every corner had been lit. Even Eloise's garden had become a meditation space, shaded with trellises and hanging bells that caught the wind. Bo exhaled slowly. "I dreamed of her last night." Lena turned. "Eloise?" He nodded. "She was older. Maybe 12. She was reading under the old tree, the one behind the nursery. She looked up and said, 'You're doing it right, Daddy.' Then she disappeared." Lena touched his chest, just over his heart. That was real. Maybe not in the way the world measures real, but in here, that was her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Later that morning, Pastor Ward arrived, hat in hand, smile soft as ever. He greeted them both with a nod, then placed a single wooden cross in the small chapel, a gift carved from one of the original beams of the house. At the base was a plaque with a quote, "Love doesn't end. It just learns a new way to speak." Lena read the words aloud, her voice catching halfway through. Bo squeezed her hand. "She'd like that." "She does," Lena whispered. By midday, the house was humming. A young patient played soft notes on the parlor piano. Someone was baking cinnamon rolls in the kitchen. A volunteer read aloud in the sunroom while two guests listened with their eyes closed, smiling. And in the courtyard, near the memorial bench Bo had built, Lena sat with a little girl named June. Her grandfather had been one of the first to register for care. June held a drawing in her lap, crayon flowers, a crooked house, two people holding hands. "Is that you and your grandpa?" Lena asked gently. June shook her head. "No, that's you and the man with the garden." Lena blinked. "Bo?" June nodded. "You're the heart. He's the ground." Lena felt the lump in her throat swell. That's a beautiful way to say it. June looked at the flowers, her voice small. "He said when people go, you can still talk to them. You just gotta speak quiet, like inside your chest." Lena wrapped an arm around her. "He's right." That evening, as the sun lowered and bathed the estate in soft peach light, Lena and Bo stood on the steps, watching as lanterns were lit down the lavender path. Patients and families gathered for the first evening ceremony. Just reflections and candles, no sermons. A place for memory. A space for peace. Bo leaned close. "This is everything I didn't know I needed." Lena turned to him, brushing a piece of hair from his forehead.
and you are everything I didn't know I could love." He kissed her gently, and the wind stirred the lavender just enough to make it dance. They didn't speak after that. They simply stood together, two people who had lost, endured, and rebuilt, not perfectly, but truthfully. The Eloise house glowed behind them, alive with grace, and Lena knew without doubt they had created something rare. Not just a place where love could say goodbye, but where love could also stay. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way.